Have you started up a game of Civ 7 and have gone to place a building and just thought, well, where the hell should I put this? The numbers are bigger on some tiles and other tiles have bonuses that just seem to be random? But what if I told you there's been a breakthrough? What if I told you we could turn any random city into this? In this video, you will learn exactly how to create the most disgusting yields in Civilization 7 consistently. No matter the spawn, no matter the civ, no matter the strategy, every game, it's the same. My name is Drongo, this is Civ 7, and join me as we take one more turn. We've covered adjacencies in a previous video, which was an advanced guide, but there's been a breakthrough and I wanted to share it. The breakthrough is that there's actually a formula that you can follow to guarantee these yields every single game, and it's kind of similar to the game of Sudoku. Let's start off by briefly touching on the three components of this breakthrough, and then we'll get into the step-by-step on how to reproduce it. The first component is the palace. The palace is the unique building that is placed in your capital city center. You don't have these in towns, you have city halls instead. The palace is different from those in that it provides an adjacency bonus to quarters that are around its center. When you build two buildings on the same tile together, that is called a quarters, and that is what the palace gets its adjacency bonus for. An adjacency bonus occurs when something is adjacent to something else. We see this quite a lot in Civilization games, but in Civ 7 in particular, they're very important. By taking advantage of the palace and its adjacency bonus to quarters, we're able to build the first component of this breakthrough. The second component is yield matching. This is where we take the adjacency bonuses of buildings and pair them up with buildings that are similar to them. For example, the gold building gets adjacency bonuses depending on how much water is adjacent to it when you place it down on a tile. However, food buildings also get the same adjacency, and that means that we can match those yields together and guarantee that if they're going to be making strong yields, they're going to be making strong yields together. There are three different groupings for yield matching. The first one is food and gold buildings, which have adjacency to water. The second one is happiness and culture buildings, which have adjacency bonuses to mountains. And the third one is science and production buildings, and these have an adjacency bonus to resources. Keeping these buildings together by matching their yields leads us into our third component of this breakthrough, and that is the specialist. A specialist is a citizen that you put on a specific urban tile. It provides a base of 2 science and 2 culture. However, it also amplifies the adjacency of any of the buildings that are on that urban tile. So that gold building that we were talking about before, each side of the tile that you place it is going to provide it a gold adjacency. That means that the gold yield for that building is going to increase by 1 for every single piece of water that is adjacent to it. What the specialist does is it takes that same bonus and it multiplies it by 0.5. That means if you've got a gold building, in this case a market, with 4 adjacencies to water, that's going to provide it 4 extra gold, but the specialist will come along, provide its base of 2 science, 2 culture, and then an additional 0.5 gold for each of those adjacencies for a total of 2 extra gold per turn. Keep in mind that this adds to the existing bonuses that that building is getting. So that extra gold that you're getting, it is on top of what already exists. So the reason we were able to get such crazy yields in that first city that you saw is because the palace and the adjacency bonuses that it gives are exactly the same as the yield matching bonuses that you get from a market that is adjacent to a water tile, and a specialist will multiply that. That means if we're able to get a 6 culture, 6 science bonus on the palace, a specialist is going to provide a +3 culture and +3 science bonus on top of its base yields. What this translates to in Civ 7 is an incredible difference between players who will prioritize placing down buildings based on the adjacency and players who don't. And if we can come up with some key rules that are easy to follow and easy to remember, we can maximize our adjacencies with minimal effort. Throughout the video, we'll be referring to different rings around the palace, and that simply means the distance that they are from the palace, with ring 1 being immediately adjacent to the palace, ring 2 being 1 tile away from the palace, and ring 3, which is 2 tiles away from the palace. Okay, so let's get into the step-by-step. The first component of this technique focuses on maximizing the bonus from the palace. We're aiming to get a +6/+6, which will take 6 quarters or 12 buildings. Not every game will you have all 6 tiles around your palace available to build on, Some games there will be mountains, some games there will be resources, some games there will be coast or a navigable river, but your goal is to get as many quarters as possible onto these 6 tiles. In Antiquity Age, there are 14 buildings that can be made on land by every civ. There is also the bath, the fishing quay, and the lighthouse, as well as a whole bunch of unique buildings for half of the Antiquity civs. But this video is not going to focus on those, as we want to keep this applicable to all games played with any leader and any civ, rather than being specific. So let's get into some golden rules. The first golden rule is never construct a building together with your palace. It should only be your palace and your palace alone that is in the middle of your city. The reason why we do this is because every time you put down a building, that's half of a quarter. And if we can get that full quarter around your palace, that's going to give you the adjacency bonus of 1 science and 1 culture. The second golden rule is with regard to warehouse buildings. A warehouse building is a special building in Civ 7 because it doesn't have an adjacency bonus. You can place it anywhere and it's going to provide the improvements that it gives irrespective of where it is in your settlement. Warehouse building examples include the granary, the fishing quay, the brickyard, and the saw pit, and they provide bonuses to the yields on tiles. As an example, if you've got a fishing boat, then the fishing quay will provide +1 food. So let's get to the golden rule. The second golden rule is that warehouse buildings should only go in the first ring around your palace. They should not go in the second ring or the third ring. This is because warehouse buildings do not have adjacency bonuses. They do not need to be out in the field. They can be comfy back at Langley with the palace. Further, they are ageless, which means their bonus is not lost when you transition through to the next age, as you do lose adjacency bonus on almost every single building when you're transitioning into the next age. This is particularly powerful because it will mean that the adjacency bonus, which scales by the way as you go through the ages, it gets stronger, but it will stay with you from the very beginning of the age and makes it much easier for you to scale. The third golden rule is to never build a wonder adjacent to your palace, unless there are no other spots and you really badly want that wonder. The palace doesn't get adjacency bonuses for wonders, so putting them in the first ring of your city wastes that tile. It's equivalent to having a mountain tile there that you just can't use. So now we've gotten our golden rules down, let's talk about how we actually decide what goes where. This is where Sudoku comes in. Every spawn is like a new puzzle to solve. Whenever you spawn into a game, you're now going to be asking 3 key questions. Number 1. Do I have a tile with multiple resources adjacent? Number 2, do I have a tile with multiple sides adjacent to water, such as coast or a navigable river? And number 3, do I have a tile with multiple sides adjacent to a mountain or a natural wonder? Unfortunately, in Civ 7, we don't have pins yet, which means if you want to keep track of where you're putting a specific building, you're going to need to remember that. But it's actually pretty straightforward once you get it down. Let's walk through an example. Okay, so here is our very first spawn. We're playing with Freidrich, and who are we playing with? Let's take a look, because this is just random civs. We're playing as the Romans. Okay, so we've got a little bit of water over towards our right, and we've got quite a bit of resource tiles, but it's important that we see all of our tiles first before we start making decisions. So I'm going to go ahead and settle in place. It doesn't look like we're going to have access to fresh water here, so we'll go ahead and do that, and we'll start with a scout, as we always do, and roll over our turn. And we'll just immediately look to do a search, and that's going to reveal absolutely everything around, and we've got a bit better of an idea what our plan is now. So we're going to go ahead and just put pottery in, just to start us off, and we'll do a second scout, and let's cancel this scout so we've actually got a little bit more clarity on our vision. So I'm starting to see a vision already. First and foremost, we've got a mountain to our south. So this is easily going to answer the question, where does our monument go? Where does our amphitheater go? Where do our happiness buildings go? They're going to be going along these tiles here. The second question that we're going to be looking for are, where are those resources? So we've got a nice little cluster up here, so we could look at putting down a library on this tile, but what I'm really seeing is that we've got a triple cluster here. Now keep in mind, you don't have to improve the resource to actually get the bonus yield from it, or the bonus adjacency from it. So what we could do is we could put down a building here, and then we could subsequently put down our library here, and then we could use that to reach out over here and eventually put down our academy. So this would be a little bit later on in the game, but that's the sort of mindset that I'd be looking at. Now, you could technically look to put your library out here very early on, but I'm very hesitant to do that. The library comes in quite early, and spending buildings to get all the way out here just for an extra +1 yield doesn't make a lot of sense. And the reason why is because the buildings that you're going to have to get on out here might be the difference between having a +2 yield in the capital, or even higher than that once you've got your specialists in. And then finally, we need to talk about our water tiles. So there are some good water tiles. So we've got this one up towards the top. We've also got this one. Unfortunately, it's got a resource on it, so we're not going to be able to pick up the adjacency there. And along this side, we've only got 2 tiles of adjacency. However, there is one tile over here, which has actually got 1, 2, 3 adjacency for water, which means that we could look to put our, we wouldn't put our granary out here, but we could put our garden out here, and we could also put our market. And the other thing is that we could use this to connect from this library tile. So already I'm seeing a vision, and it is that we're having a library here together with our blacksmith or a barracks, and then we'd be putting our granary, or sorry, our garden and our market out here. Just keep in mind the granary doesn't get any bonus yields here, even though it's a food building. It's a warehouse building, so it doesn't get those bonus yields. So we'd be saving our granary for around our capital city, and then we would be looking to put that garden, that market down here, and that's the sort of vision that I'm seeing. So let's take a look and see, what does that actually look like? Okay, it's turn 14, and we've finished our granary with our library about to come up in 1 turn. Now, keep in mind, in this game, we're not making settlers, and that's because we want to accelerate through the ages to show you exactly how we're building this. But in your games, you will be building settlers, normally however slowly or quickly you'd like to, and then you're going to be building buildings in between, or constructing buildings in between. So let's roll over to our end of the turn, and you'll see our library is now complete with our 4 science from the bonus or the 2 resources that we've got adjacent to it, as well as the 1 culture, which is coming from our Roman bonus. So the next question is, what building do we look to put next, and where do we put it? So to me, that answer is clear: the brickyard. It is a straightforward building. We've got +1 production that's going to be coming through from it, and instead of putting it adjacent to the capital and any of these other positions, we're going to immediately look to complete the granary. And that's simply because it's going to provide us that extra bonus culture, that extra bonus science. And then that means that we really don't have to think about it, because you will often have to, throughout these games, think about, at least in the early stages, what your plan is and where you're going to be putting these buildings down. So let's roll over until we've got our building completed. And so now that it's been completed, it is going to form a quarter, and that quarter now has an adjacency bonus with our capital. And so now the next building, where do we go? We're going for the saw pit, and this time we're going to be putting the saw pit down adjacent to our capital once again, and we'll just go with this tile right here, and we'll speed through the game. We've got another 3 turns until we do it, and slowly we're starting to see exactly where these things are getting put down. So we know that towards the south, we want to keep these open for monuments, for our villa, for our amphitheater, for our arena, potentially, if we're looking to do that. So that's why we're not building down here. We're building away from where we, in our mind, have got those pins already sitting. And so now, of course, we'll put our altar down, and that's going to, once again, provide the 1 culture and the 1 science bonus. And early on in the game, this is a huge bonus, but remember that this scales throughout the game. Once we get specialists, we can throw them and slot them in here, and it's going to boost that up even more. So let's move on a little bit forward to when our gardens and our markets are finally thrown down. Okay, it's turn 30, and we're about to unlock currency, and that's going to give us access to our market as well as to specialists. So we're going to go ahead and accept our celebration, which is going to give us extra production towards buildings, and we'll also go ahead and put our garden down. So we've got a couple of options where we can put it down. We could go around the palace, which would give us that adjacency bonus, but if we did that, we'd be losing out on those bonus adjacency yields. So we can technically take this spot as well, but keep in mind, we want to keep this open because there's not only is there water here, that there's adjacency, there's also resources, and this is going to be very attractive once we roll into the late game. So we'll go ahead, we'll drop the garden down on this tile right here and roll it over into our next turn. That's going to give us our next our citizenship as well as our currency. And then from here, we will look to put down our market on that same tile. And that tile is going to allow us now to have some absolutely crazy adjacencies from that. And we can actually start thinking about putting in our first specialist. And one of the tricks that you can do with regard to those specialists is you can look to do some very cheeky leapfrogging. If you've got a wonder, what you can do is you can put that wonder down on a tile. So in this situation, we can just put the wonder down adjacent to the capital. I'll throw it down here, and then what I'll do is I'll just cancel that wonder. And now that will evict that citizen from that tile, and now we can take that citizen and turn them into a specialist. And you can see we've got those adjacency bonuses that are already giving us a really nice yield from here, and that's how we can maximize our yields quite early on, even just with you know, we're only at turn 34, and this is still quite a nice adjacency bonus. It's turn 42, and we're starting to reach the mid-game when it comes to our building selection. We've got access to cultural buildings, happiness buildings, and production buildings. So let's go ahead and look at where we're going to be putting them down. We've already made that plan earlier on, but how exactly does it roll out? Let's take a look. So for us, it's pretty simple. We're not going to be planting down our monument in any really crazy location. We've got a mountain that's adjacent to one of those tiles that's adjacent to our capital, so this is just a really simple placement. We're just going to go ahead and put that monument down, and you can see that the difference that it gets by being adjacent to the mountain, it's going to get that 1 extra yield from the mountain. So we'll go ahead and do that. We'll roll over the turn, and that's going to complete our monument for us. Further to that, we can also look to put down our villa. Now we can purchase our villa because we've got some gold saved up, and that villa is not only going to get that bonus adjacency, so here we can see that it's 3 happiness, 2 influence, and that'll go to 4 influence, or rather 4 happiness and 2 influence here, but we also pick up that culture as well as that science from being adjacent and completing the quarter to the capital. So we'll go ahead and purchase the villa, plop that bad boy down, and we'll also construct our barracks. So we've got 2 options with where we put our barracks down. We could look to put it on this tile here, which is getting a higher yield than this one, and that's because it's got the extra resource that's adjacent to it. However, once we complete this tile here, once we turn this into a quarter, it won't receive a bonus from the capital because it needs to be adjacent to the capital. However, we can look to get a specialist in here. So let's go ahead and we'll put down the barracks on this tile. And keep in mind that as the game goes longer, we will eventually put more buildings onto this tile. So right now, perhaps the correct decision is to put it on this tile, but it's more of an investment because we can actually get this specialist right now, get it working out in the field. So let's go ahead and grow city, and you'll see that we can now, with this specialist, we can get the extra science and we can get the extra production out of it because it's going to be maximizing the adjacency out of that. On top of that, we've also got the specialist in the capital, which is a very juicy specialist. Have a look at that. Typically, I avoid the specialists that are the culture and the happiness specialists. They don't seem to be having as impactful yields as the scientific, the production, as well as the capital. You can see the capital ones are very nice here, 3.5 and 3.5. So we'll go ahead and we'll put the specialist in here, grab an extra point of production, and that same point of production we would have got from over here anyway. So I think this is a very reasonable investment, and let's move on to a little bit further on in the game now. Okay, it's turn 63 and we've got access to some more buildings, but before we get into those buildings, I want to talk about wonders. Almost all buildings have an adjacency bonus with wonders. That means if we take a look at the library and have a look at the adjacencies that it gets, you'll see that it gets a bonus adjacency for a wonder. Now, there's 2 components to this. The first component is that that's going to increase the yield of the library from 2 up to 3. But then if you've got a specialist in there, that will also multiply from the specialist, which means you get an extra 0.5 science if you've got an adjacent wonder. And that's what happens when you cluster districts like this. We've got the garden and the market, and then we've got the library and the barracks, and then we've got the monument and the villa. And before this game had even really begun, I had visualized that there was going to be a world wonder that comes down in between all of these. Now, keep in mind, you don't actually get any bonus yields on the granary, on the brickyard. So if we take a look and see what kind of yields we're talking about here, if we scroll down to the bottom, you'll see that the wee young Pallas gets 2 food, 2 gold, 2 hammers, 2 science, a culture, a happiness, and 6 influence. And if we have a look at what it's actually meant to get, it is only meant to get 6 influence. So all of those bonuses that it's providing are adjacency yields to the surrounding buildings. So if we go ahead and complete that, you'll see that the number has gone from a 10 to 11.5 science here. So that's another way that we can further multiply these yields. Thank you, Gwendolyn. Thank you, Gwendolyn. So we can use that to multiply our yields even further. So we've almost completed our amphitheater right here, which once again, you know, it's very simple. It's underneath the mountain, adjacent to the capital. Now, one thing to note with the amphitheater, as the game gets longer, it's more likely that you're going to be able to get out further with the amphitheater. So it's going to come down to how much you can justify moving out, and there's no golden rule for this one. My suggestion, though, is keeping things close around the capital actually works out a lot better, and there's a huge amount of potential that you can get because of the ability to stack specialists. But anyway, let's go ahead. We'll just complete the amphitheater right now, and now that it's completed, we'll take a look at our final additions to this city. Now, keep in mind, there's still some buildings that we haven't built out just yet, but we'll worry about that. We'll worry about that another day. So we've got our blacksmith and our academy, and we've been planning for this all game. And you can see that we've got a couple of different spots that we could potentially put it down. We've got a 7 over here because it's got the +2. We've got a 7 over here because it's got the dates as well as the Young, but we're of course going to be taking the 8. And the great thing about this is it stacks up perfectly with the blacksmith. We can put the blacksmith on the exact same spot. Now you might see this and you might think, oh, chuck it there, you get an extra culture, get an extra science. We can put any building here and we'll get an extra culture and extra science. So we want to take advantage of those adjacency bonuses, because remember, once we get our specialist and we put them inside, it's going to multiply that even further. So we'll leave it there for this playthrough, but let's dive into another one where it's not so straightforward, just so, you know, you can get a hang on things a little bit more easily. Okay, so here we are on turn 1 playing as Napoleon of, who is that? Is that the Axumite civilization? And we've got a pretty cool spawn here. So we've got a lot of resource tiles, so definitely going to be thinking about putting a cluster down here of maybe a library together with an early barracks, so we can maximize those adjacency bonuses. We do also have a water tile, and we've also got another resource tile to the back, so we're not going to be able to use that tile for our adjacency bonuses. Now, technically, we can put the fishing key in here, and we can also put the lighthouse on top of it, but it's not always the best decision to make. But we'll ride on through and take a look at what else we've got, because we want to really examine every single tile and make sure that we are aware of everything. And we'll go ahead and just throw that bad boy down and start researching poetry. And we'll get out a warrior just in case there's any nearby neighbors. So having a look at this, I think that the most sensible spot to put down our garden as well as our market is going to be in this position here. It's going to have a 1, 2, 3 adjacency. I'd love to put it right here where we could pick up a 1, 2, 3, 4 adjacency. And this is a mangrove. I don't think you get adjacencies for that, but that's a 4 adjacency, but we can't because of the Kalin that is here. So we'll have to settle for a +3, and it's also quite close to the capital. So I think what we'll be looking to do here is build probably a monument here and a villa here. I'm already starting to see it. Okay, so we pulled the monument and the villa here. We build the garden and the market here. A lighthouse. Remember that the lighthouse gets bonus adjacency based on the water tiles that are around it. We can put that out here, and then we can build the Colossus in this position, and then that will give adjacency bonuses to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 buildings. We could put the granary here, and together with like the altar, but the World Wonder is not going to give it an adjacency bonus. So for me, in my mind, I already see a straightforward path in that regard by putting the monument here. And I know you might be tempted to say, well, hold on a minute, there's mountains here. You could put the mountains up here. There's a great little spot for you to do it. We've got a 3 adjacency. And the truth is, I really don't value culture that highly when it comes to adjacencies, especially when they're far away from the capital. A really important consideration is going to be, how am I getting to my location? If there's a clear way for you to get there, then it makes sense. In the last playthrough, there was a clear way for us to get to that 3 adjacency science and production location. Whereas here, I don't really see one, because I'm going to want to build that monument in my first ring. It's a valuable building, and I've only got 14 buildings that I can use. So that means I've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. Okay, it could be possible. It could be possible. But remember, we also want to take advantage of the blacksmith and the academy. Now, we know if we're putting the library down here together with the barracks, the blacksmith and the academy, they need to be adjacent to resources as well. Now, we've talked about the first ring, the second ring, and the third ring. The first ring being immediately adjacent to your capital, the second ring being the second ring out, and then the third ring being out the third ring out. But have we talked about the fourth ring? So the fourth ring is what happens when you have to go around something to get to it. And this is always a really bad idea, unless you've got like something crazy. Like imagine if there was like 5 resource tiles right here and they were all adjacent to this one. And this is technically within 3 rings. But to get here, remember, we need to connect our urban districts. We can't have a rural district in between, which would mean we'd need to put a granary down here, which we can do. And then we'd need to connect it to a monument. And then we'd need to connect that to a villa. And then we'd need to connect that to our final, our blacksmith and our I was going to say our university, our apologies, our academy. I blanked for a second there. And that might be reasonable to do if you've got 5 resources. And that's a decision you're going to have to make. I can't tell you if that's the right call or not. But the point is you have to create that road out towards, or road's probably not the right word, but you have to create that, that trail out towards that position. And I don't know if it's really worth it. I think the amphitheater and the arena being here is going to make a lot of sense. I think the blacksmith and the academy is going to make a lot of sense right here. And then we can probably just fill in this with a granary. We can fill this in with an altar, and we can put our saw pit and brickyard here. And then that way we've pretty much got everything covered, and we know roughly where we're going. So let's get to it and take a look at what it looks like. Okay, it's turn 34 and we've got quite a bit of infrastructure down at this point. One thing to note though is we still don't have this library paired up. And I know that might seem counterintuitive, especially because it's so easy to pair up with just anything. We could throw a brickyard in there, we could throw a granary in there, but the truth is we want to get the bonus yields from having the specialist on this tile. And if we put that extra building in, such as an altar or a saw pit or a granary or a brickyard, we're not going to be getting it. You can see that these only get +2s when we could be getting that lovely yield right there if we were to put a production building with it, if we were to pair that up. So we're waiting at the moment for bronze working. Once it comes in, we're going to have access to the barracks, which is going to be providing that additional yield. So that's one of the things that we're looking at. Further to that, our capital is actually doing quite well at the moment. It's got +3s, but nothing too crazy. Once we finish this, that's going to push that up to a 3.5. And once we finish this district, which has got the monument in it, we'll be waiting for the villa to pair that up, and that's going to come through at the wheel. And once that's through, then that's going to be pushing that up to a +4. We're only missing out on that +5 because we've got the iron, and there's nothing we can do about that. And we've got the water or the coastal tile here. We've got a fishing quay at the moment, so we're going to have to make the decision: do we put a lighthouse here, or do we put the lighthouse out on this position? So we spoke earlier about the Colossus and about putting it in this position where it's going to be hitting 5 buildings. But one of the other things that we're going to be looking to do is put another world wonder down. So what we're going to do is go ahead and grab the hanging gardens, and we're going to put this on this tile right here, which is going to provide at the moment 1 culture, 1 gold, and 1 food. And that is going to be for your culture building, your gold building, and your food building. But remember, we've also got a production and a science building that we're planning to put here later on in the game. That's going to provide that bonus, an adjacency bonus, and then we're going to put scientists. We're going to put specialists in there, and that's going to further boost that up. So there's quite a lot of thinking if you want to actually do it when it comes to these decisions in Civ 7. It's turn 48, and we are ready to add the final piece of the puzzle to our capital city. Let's head into our production queue and drop down our final building here, which is going to be our villa. As you can see, we're going to pick up a bonus yield from it being against the hanging gardens, as well as getting that bonus adjacency in the capital city. So now that we've completed that, that means if we take a look, you'll see that we've got a +4 bonus here for these specialists. And keep in mind that we can stack these specialists up. If we were to unlock another wonder, so as an example, if we were going to grab the Anchor Wand, that would give us a 2nd specialist limit in this settlement, and it would mean that we could put a 2nd specialist on that tile. And it might not seem like much, but it really starts to add up quickly. So now that we've completed that, let's take a look at where else we're going. So we're also planning to put down the Colossus. The Colossus will be coming up against these 2 positions, and you can see that it's going to be providing, it's got a base of 3 gold, so that's why you see that extra 4th gold there. So anywhere we put it along here, it's going to provide 3 gold, but we get a 4th gold here because we've got the gold building that's here. It also provides food for the food building, happiness for the happiness building, and culture for the culture building. So we'll put that down in that position. And you can see we've got 1 turn on it because we may have been hoarding our production. And the other thing to note is that we can purchase our buildings and put them through to here. So we know that we want to put the blacksmith down on this tile, but we can't reach it. Actually, we can reach it because we've got the hanging gardens. But if we couldn't reach it because of the hanging gardens, we could put the amphitheater down first, which would go in this spot right here. And then from there, we could then look to put the blacksmith down over on that tile, and that would allow us to complete it. So let's go ahead, let's roll over this one. And we've completed the Colossus. And for anybody wondering how I did that, if you just end the turn, oh gosh, she's gonna
find ourselves dishonorable graves.
So what I was doing is I'm forcibly ending the turn without spending my production, and then that saves up my production. So I'm kind of keeping it just in the back pocket, ready to spend So here we can put the blacksmith down on that tile, and then that's going to give us an option for quite a nice adjacency bonus. So let's speed through here. Hopefully we don't have any war declarations or anything that come through in the time. And we're starting to build this. I mean, at this stage of the game, it's almost looking complete. The puzzle has been completed, essentially. So now we've got a +7 blacksmith over here, and of course we can put the specialist in there, and we get an extra 1.5 on top of that. So these yields are a lot more than the 2.2 or the 2.2 that you normally see. So you can see we've got a lot of 2.2s that are down here, and then we've got quite a nice yield here. We've got these ones as well. And another thing to just keep in mind, which I'll touch on later on in the video, is that science and culture are difficult to come by. There's not a lot of ways that you can get them in Civ 7. So by doing this, it's a great way to really boost up your numbers. Let's take a look at our next example. Okay, so our final walkthrough for this video. This one was actually sent to me by a good friend of mine by the name of Pike, so thank you, Pike, for sending this one in. And the reason why he sent this one in was because this is actually a really hard spawn. If you take a look at this, this is not easy. It's not straightforward. There's a lot of coast, there's a lot of water that's going to be in your cap. So still you have to try and move forward. And one of the problems that this spawn has got is it's a very low food spawn. So there's a lot of production that's out on these tiles, but there's not a lot of food, which means you're going to have to play into the water. And because you're playing water, it means that you're going to have to tech differently. You're not just going to be able to go granary into a saw pit, into a library. It's not going to be that simple. So you have to change the way that you are teching in order to balance that lack of food. So we'll be looking to take advantage of the water early on. Let's settle in place and see if we can spot something after we've got a little bit more vision. So we'll go ahead, we'll take our scout, and we'll hit the search button, and we've already got a wonder up towards our north. Now, we're not going to be looking to settle this wonder, because today, keep in mind, we're just looking to play this city here, just so we can work out those adjacencies. So first and foremost, fishing key is going to be imperative here. So just to start us off, we're going to have to go into sailing. That's going to be pretty much the first building that we put down. Other than that, so fishing key is going to be going here. When it comes to our garden, it's probably going to go on this tile right here. That gives us 1, 2, 3, 4 adjacency for the garden, and it keeps it in the closest ring to the capital. So not only do we get the 4 adjacency for that, but we also get the +1 culture, +1 science that's going to be coming through from the palace. And then we can also put the market on that tile, because we'll double them up, making sure their yields are matching. And then one of the things to note is that if you've got a lot of fishing boats early on, you're going to be low on production. Even though this is a high production start, we're not going to be investing in these production tiles because we want to be growing. So what we'll be looking to do is build our blacksmith, our brickyard, and our saw pit, and we want to build those early. And what we're going to do is we'll throw them down on this tile here. So I think we'll go both I keep calling it blacksmith, sorry. We'll do our brickyard as well as our saw pit on this tile after the fishing key, and then from there, we'll move into our library. I think that's going to make the most sense here. And then other than that, we've also got a beautiful spot for the monument and the villa, which will go down on this tile. And then we can piggyback them or leapfrog them. I'm not going to use the word leapfrog again, but we can put the amphitheater as well as the arena on this tile. That gives them a nice adjacency. We're not going to be able to get rid of this silver. That's staying there whether we like it or not, the same way that this water is staying here no matter what. And then finally, we could look to put the altar down on this tile together with the granary. The granary is not going to be a really key building early on in this specific capital, mainly because there's no tiles here for us to work that actually take advantage of the granary. It's all going to be water tiles that we're taking advantage of. That's the primary thing. So let's dive into a little bit further on in this game so you can get a bit of an idea on where we sit. All right, we're back on turn 38 with our playthrough of Xerxes here, and we're just about to finish our market right on this beautiful little spot that we've got here. That's going to give us a lovely adjacency bonus. We've also just unlocked our next building, which is going to be our barracks, going in with our library. It's got a beautiful +7 at the moment. And, well, I couldn't help myself, but I said, you know what, we have to do Petra. We have to do it, so I went ahead, I made Petra. And we've had war declared on us, okay, by Confucius of all people.
Sedentary life is
But there's Petra.
civilization's goal.
All right, so we've completed Petra, and you can
It
see
marks the end of its
we've got
life
some decent
and
tiles.
heralds its corruption.
Thank you, Gwendolyn. We've got some decent tiles in here as well, so we get a +5. You may have noticed we've got multiple volcanoes that are doing their thing here. They haven't rained down too much problems just yet, but let's take a look at some of the adjacencies and see exactly how we're doing in here. So our capital's at a 3.5, 3.5, which means that we've completed 3 of our city centerpieces. So that means that we've got 1 completed here, a second one completed here, and a third one completed over here. And that's going to give us those adjacency bonuses. On top of that, we've also got a very nice adjacency bonus out here on the market and on the garden, which is giving us the extra food and the extra gold. And then we've got this one down to the bottom, and we can actually just go ahead. Let's throw in our barracks. You can see it's going to take us 2 turns, but we can just go ahead and build that. And it might be very tempting to throw it in here, but obviously once you know the rules and you say, okay, well, hold on, I know I'm going to get that 1 culture, that 1 science, no matter what. That gives, even though it gives me a higher yield in here, we get more production from this. And it means that when we put in our specialist down here, that we're going to be picking up even more production on top of that. Now it goes up to 5 production, and we can always just come back here and put in another building once we've got it. So at the moment, what are we working towards? We should be working towards the wheel, and that'll be another 4 turns, and that'll give us access to our happiness building, the villa, and we can then put our villa in here, and then that will give us that extra adjacency bonus in the middle. So now that we've talked through these examples and given you a bit of an idea on exactly how to go about it yourself, let's talk a little bit about some of the exceptional circumstances, because I'll be honest, I'll confess, that first city that you saw, it wasn't just as simple as putting all the buildings together. There were actually quite a different bunch of building blocks that all went together to build that crazy yield that you saw. Okay, so now that we're back here, let's talk about exactly how these yields got so high. Now, if we take a look here, you're going to recognize that we've used all the same principles that I've been teaching throughout this video. We see the saw pit and the altar together. We see the monument and the villa together. We see the arena and the amphitheater, our 2 happiness buildings, our two culture buildings together, and of course out here we see our garden and our market. We've got our adjacencies between the blacksmith, the academy, and the library and the barracks. All of these same rules have been followed, but there's one thing that's also contributing to this yield significantly. You may have already noticed all of these wonders that we've got. Now keep in mind, pretty much every building in the game, if I remember correctly, gets a bonus adjacency for that. So that's another reason why these yields are high. But if that was the only thing you thought that was contributing to this, you are mistaken. The key here is the amount of specialists we've actually got in here. Now, when you research currency, you're going to have access to specialists in your cities, but there's no other technology available in this age that's going to give you a specialist increase. There is a world wonder that you can build, which is available to you all the way down at philosophy, called the Anchor Watt, and that's going to increase that specialist limit from 1 up to 2. And so that means that now on the city center, instead of having 1 specialist, you can have 2. It means on all of these tiles, instead of having 1 specialist, you can have 2. But there's also a third way that you can increase your specialist limit, and the only way I found that I could do it, at least in the antiquity age, because keep in mind, we're still in the age of antiquity right now, it was with Ibn Battuta. And that is because of his special ability to have more wildcard points. If we take a look at the expansionist tree, all the way down at the bottom, there is +1 specialist limit in all cities. So that means that we go from a 2 to a 3 specialist limit. And that means that every single one of these big yields that you see, they've actually got 3 specialists in each of them. This is a huge city, 40 population. We've actually used a pretty cool technique to get that population up even higher. You get 10 points if you can recognize what it might have been. I don't think I'll ever release a video on it, but it's a pretty cool technique. And it's intended, I'll say that much. It's not an exploit. Look, we won't worry about that for now. But not only that, there is something else at play, and anyone who's got a keen eye may have realized it. There was a golden rule at the beginning of this video that I said that you should never break. Do you remember what it was? Number 1. And that first golden rule was, you never put any other buildings with your palace. And you will notice that we have not followed that rule here. In fact, we've got a very special building that's with the palace, and it's not an amphitheater. The amphitheater is down here, so you might be looking at that and thinking, it looks like an amphitheater. It's not. This is actually a unique building. And it's something that I alluded to a little bit earlier on, that I wouldn't be focusing on that throughout the video, because I wanted to teach you the fundamentals without really getting into those sorts of things. But this just drives home how crazy it can get. So each civilization has got different bonuses, and some of them get bonuses towards adjacencies, and that's where we've taken advantage of this in this strategy. So specifically right now, we're playing as the Greeks, and they get access to a unique building, and that unique building is called the Odeon. It has a +1 culture adjacency for quarters and wonders. Now, this is a unique building, which typically means that you're going to be pairing it with the other unique building. However, if we take a look at what the unique quarter does, which is what happens when you pair these two together, it doesn't actually do that much. It gives you +2 gold on the Parthenon, which is this building, for each city-state you're a suzerain of. So 2 gold, 4 gold, 6 gold, 8 gold. Okay. And what about this one? Well, this is +1 culture adjacency for quarters. Let that sink in. +1 culture adjacency for quarters. So if I put that in here, +1 culture adjacency for quarters, and I've got 6 quarters, that means I've got 6 culture coming through, and I've got 1 specialist, so that's 9 culture. And then I've got 2 specialists, that's 12 culture. I've got 3 specialists, that's 15 culture. And each one of those is multiplying their own bonus or that base yield even further. And it's because of that that we're able to get ludicrous yields like this. Like this capital's got more than 100 yields on it right now, and it's absolutely crazy. Now, every single civ has got different bonuses or some civs have got bonuses, some civs don't have bonuses to adjacency. So just to give you a couple that I've listed. So the Mississippians have got food adjacency for resources. They've also got gold adjacency in their civic. Then we've got the Mayans that have got adjacency on their palace as well as on their altar, which is crazy. Don't get me started about the Mayans. They are next level when it comes to this stuff. You've also got the Han, which get an adjacency for science. That's one of their unique civics. You've got the Greeks, which we've talked about with their bonus building, and you've also got the Mayans, who have a very similar building called the Jalor. Now, why the Jalor is different, so if we take a look here, this is the Jalor. It's got +3 happiness, 1 culture adjacency for quarters and wonders, so it also gets that +1 culture adjacency for quarters, and the reason why I wouldn't ever pair it here is just simply because it's actually really good in its unique arrangement. So if we take a look down at the, I want to say it's this one right here, so this is the unique Mayan one. So when you put the 2 unique buildings that they've got together into the same, so that is the Kuna together with the Jalor, when you put them into the same district or the same quarter, sorry, you get the unique quarter, and that is every time you research a technology, this settlement gains production equal to 15% of its cost. So that's basically just taking 15% of whatever your science is and giving it to you as production every so often. So we've got 158 science here. So you're talking about roughly 22, 23, maybe 24 science, or 24 science is 15%. So that's 24 production. And if we look at this, we've got 64 production at the moment. So that goes up to like 80, 82, 80, or probably like what, 86, 87, somewhere in that region. It's a lot of production. So for me, I look at that, I'm like, look, you could technically do that with the Mayans as well, but it's not worthwhile doing. Other than that, let me take a look through my notes and see if there was anything else that I really wanted to mention. Oh, yeah, other than that, I wanted to keep this simple. I was actually going to go through and give every single building a specific rating, which I know is kind of crazy. So if we just go have a look at buildings, but I just want to sort of explain my thinking here. So every building has got like a specific rating as to how far I would extend to go get it. So I think that you should really try quite hard to find a good optimized or a well-optimized garden and market. I think that you should try your best to maximize that. And that means even if you're going out to like the 3rd ring, that you should still try and make your way out there, because the value from putting specialists into here is huge. Look at the yields on these tiles. You're talking right now, this is 30, 40, 50, this is, and we're in the age of antiquity, right? Like if you think about the victory conditions in the exploration age, one of them is to have a 40 yield tile that's not a capital, or not the city center, and you've got one that's a 50 and it's in the age of antiquity. And keep in mind, in exploration, you'll get much stronger buildings with higher yields. So this is, incredibly powerful to do. So even if this was on like the 3rd ring, I would still go for it. Where I wouldn't really be as flexible is on, it'll always be the culture and the happiness buildings. I don't see a huge amount of value in having this extra culture, this extra happiness that's constantly rolling in. The science and the production, these guys I think are worth doing. Further to that, I think that depending on how early you get a building should depend on how far you want to push it. You don't want to have a library in your 3rd ring, because to do that, it's going to take a lot of time. It's going to take a lot of wasted buildings that you're not going to be able to put around your capital to get that adjacency bonus. So because of that, that's why I literally gave every single building a different sort of risk rating depending on where I would put it. But I mean, I've sort of translated those general rules over in today's video. So other than that, that's pretty much it. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope it's been helpful. I've tried to keep it as simple as possible so that we can, I really want to try and nail down this sort of basic guide and be able to translate it for people that are new to Civ 7 or just new to civilization in general. So if that is you, let me know if I've managed to do that for you here. If not, if you've got any feedback, please leave it down in the comments. And yeah, of course, if you've enjoyed the video, feel free to leave a like. If you're looking forward to more Civ content, then make sure you hit that subscribe button, because there is always time for one more turn.